As of now, the dollar is one of the most powerful currencies, giving the US a competitive edge over the world economy. Even though the dollar has held its prestigious position for more than 80 years, the times are about to change. A paradigm shift is expected, and it all has to do with the sanctions on Russia. While the US is happy to have Russia restrained economically, this step may do more harm than good. Under the covers of various sanctions and restrictions, China and Russia have come up with a plan to put an end to the dollar once and for all. How would this play out? Let's explore this in today's video. The start of the plan can be traced all the way back to March 2009, when China and Russia first proposed a concept of a new global currency. They wanted the international community to establish a reserve currency that is disconnected from individual nations and is able to remain stable over the long term, thereby removing the inherent deficiencies caused by using credit-based national currencies. Both nations were concerned because they could lose the value of trillions of dollars they each hold in case there is dollar inflation. The People's Republic of China, at that time, requested that the International Monetary Fund create an alternative currency to the dollar. But because of the American influence on IMF, nothing happened on that front. The motto progressed further as a result of realizations that the United States tracks each and every financial transaction that uses dollars and goes through US banks. Every transaction that involves more than 10,000 US dollars is of particular interest. This is something that has become apparent in recent years, and most countries are not happy with it, especially China and Russia. Thus, they were both on the front when offering a replacement for the dollar. But changing something that exercises so much over the world's banking and financial markets was never an easy task. The currency has become so widespread that even in non-US foreign global reserves, there are almost $18 trillion. But China and Russia each possess considerable clout in their own right. When compared to other countries on the basis of the standards outlined in the seminal work, The Wealth of Nations, Russia would emerge as the wealthiest nation on the planet, easily surpassing the United States, which would not even make the list of the top 3. This is due to the fact that when declaring a nation wealthy, a set of demographics comes into play, which is illustrated in Smith's book and is essentially based on the resources that are available. These demographics include precious metals and products that are similar to them, the human capital, of course, in the appropriate quantity and education level, infrastructure, and lastly, free trade. In addition to being a notable provider of oil and gas, Russia possesses significant reserves beneath the Earth's surface. Additionally, it is the largest producer of diamonds in the world, and along with China, it possesses significant reserves of rare earths as well as other valuable commodities that are in high demand, such as gold. China is not only the largest producer but also the largest consumer of gold in the world. Thus, both countries are eager to combine their reserves, expand production of gold and other precious metals, and buy up gold reserves to provide one component to challenge the US currency dominance. The United States of America likewise possesses sizable gold reserves, although the amount of gold that is believed to be in American hands is subject to growing speculation. Ironically, the belief that an invasion by Russia is no longer likely has led to some nations, such as Germany, to demand that their gold reserves currently held by the US be returned to them. If this happens, the US gold reserve would plunge, helping the Russian and Chinese currencies win their war against the dollar. However, gold is not the only factor influencing the outcome of the battle against US dollar dominance. In terms of oil, the US is not among the top 10 global producers and has instead relied on political and dubious regional involvement to secure and influence supplies as well as control the global reserves. We all know leveraging is one of the most powerful geopolitical tools. Being one of the world's largest oil and gas producers, Russia has all the leverage right now and is using it very efficiently, especially after the US sanctions. Despite Saudi Arabia and other countries selling oil and gas in dollars, Russia has decided not to do this mistake. Instead, it is punishing its unfriendly countries by asking them to buy Russian oil in rubles. Most European countries now have to buy rubles despite their dislike for Putin. This means that in the payment network diagram, instead of US banks having dollar reserves, all countries that buy oil from Russia now have to keep their money in the Russian central bank. The ruble reserves would increase resultantly and is expected to compromise the US economy. The US Treasury has shrunk from $150 billion in 2013 to $3.98 billion in 2021, demonstrating Russia's leverage over Europe. Similarly, China has leverage with Belt and Road Initiative countries. If you recall, the Belt and Road Initiative is a $3 trillion project in which the Chinese have given out over-generous loans to countries all over the world. Under the BRI initiative, there are 165 countries in the world that owe a collective debt of $385 billion to China, and many of these countries have taken on so much debt from China that they are bankrupt. China also mostly issues loans in its own currency, without relying on the dollar. In 2018, Pakistan's central bank agreed to conduct bilateral trade with China in yuan, and other countries such as Myanmar, Cambodia, and Russia are following suit. Furthermore, China is now the largest trade partner with 25 BRI participating countries, so the leverage of trade for China is very strong. As a result, with the combination of both trade and debt, China could pressurize these countries to use yuan over the dollar, so that over time, China could build the strings of 165 nations and drastically increase yuan circulation. Now, you could say all of these countries were mostly poor, and that is why they agreed to terms set by China. How would China and Russia persuade rich countries like England and South Korea to abandon the dollar? Let's see the facts to understand this. Russia strongly supports China and has already made the Chinese yuan a reserve currency. As for other countries, they have something called a bilateral currency swap agreement, which even India is pursuing very strategically with its ally countries. In case you do not know how the swap works, let me explain. Suppose China and the United Kingdom sign a 5-year bilateral currency swap agreement worth $1 million. What this means is that China will sell $1 million worth of yuan to the UK, and the UK will sell $1 million worth of pounds to China. The Chinese central banks can sell their pounds and get US dollars, or it can lend these funds to domestic banks and companies to settle. Similarly, the Bank of England can do the same with the yuan. The swap brings a plethora of benefits for both countries, including the elimination of exchange risks, easier economic activity, and most importantly, no dependence on the dollar. While this does work to increase yuan in the system, to further speed up the process, China also devalues it very frequently. This tricks the other rich countries into thinking it's cheaper. This is why the yuan is being embraced very quickly in comparison to the dollar. Both Russia and China are fighting hard against the dollar. Seeing the recent developments, we can see them succeeding to a great extent. But who wins in the end is yet to be seen.